The Xantorian fleet descended silently, its ships piercing the sky like silent shadows under the heavy cloak of night. To the humans, the arrival of the alien armada had been nothing short of a miracle, or a nightmare, depending on who you asked. But what the Xantorians didn't expect was just how much Earth had been hiding. At a remote military base in Nevada, a group of soldiers stared up in awe as the sky split open with the arrival of the first wave of Xantorian ships. Massive and metallic, their surfaces shimmered with an eerie blue glow. The sheer scale of the fleet was enough to make any human heart skip a beat, but there was a strange calm to the alien presence. No weapons fired, no bombs dropped, no signs of immediate aggression. Dr. Aaron Kerr, one of Earth's leading scientists, sat in a secured command center just a few miles away. The monitors in front of her buzzed as she studied the incoming ships. Their technology was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Perfectly synchronized, their movements were precise, calculated. Not a single misstep. It was as if the very air knew how to bend around them. On her headset, a voice crackled through. "Doctor, you need to see this." The voice said urgently. It was General Langford, and his tone was grim. Without a word, Erin stood, pushing aside her cup of cold coffee. The halls of the underground facility hummed with activity as people scrambled from one task to the next. No one knew what to expect, but they all knew it wasn't going to be easy. She entered the briefing room to find Langford already there, his face pale but focused. Behind him stood the hologram, showing a detailed 3D scan of the Xantorian ship's hull. Erin's breath caught in her throat as she studied the image. It was flawless. There were no seams, no apparent joins in the metal, and the structure seemed to bend light around it. The technology was ancient, yet utterly advanced, like nothing Earth had ever developed. "What are we looking at?" Erin asked, though the answer was already becoming clear. Langford pointed to a small glowing point in the ship's design. "A core," he said, his voice low. "This thing is powered by something beyond us. It's not just any engine. We've run the scans. We can't even begin to understand how it works." Erin's mind raced. If these ships were powered by something they couldn't even comprehend, what else were they hiding? The doors to the briefing room slid open, and a new voice entered the room. It was Commander Torres, and she looked even more on edge than the others. "We've just detected a strange energy reading, Doctor," she said, her voice tight. "It's coming from an abandoned military facility, about 5 miles away. We believe the aliens are heading there." Without a word, Erin followed Torres and Langford as they hurried down the sterile hallways of the base. Outside, the world seemed oddly still, like the calm before the storm. But as they approached the facility, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and the air was charged with an unexplainable electricity. A massive Xantorian ship hovered above the facility, its engines pulsing with a strange rhythm. A group of Xantorian diplomats, adorned in shimmering robes, slowly descended from the ship in perfect formation. They moved with a grace that seemed unnatural, their eyes hidden behind dark visors, but there was no mistaking the intent in their stance. And then it happened. The humans heard the faintest hum, a sound so soft it might have been imagined, before the ground split open before them. Beneath the surface, hidden away for decades, was something that had never been meant for human eyes. A weapon, far beyond anything Earth had ever built, lay dormant in the dark. The Xantorians stared at it, eyes widening with disbelief. This wasn't just any alien technology. They were staring at the future of war itself, and Earth had it first. A quiet realization settled over the crowd. What they'd discovered on Earth, something so unexpected, would change everything. But who would control it? And how? The air was thick with tension. As the alien ships hovered silently above Earth's military base, a deep hum resonated in the atmosphere. The sky seemed to pulse with energy, as if the very heavens were holding their breath. For the first time in human history, they were face to face with an alien species, and the world didn't know what would happen next. Inside the command center, General Langford's face was a mask of concentration. His fingers hovered over the controls, ready to issue an order at a moment's notice. The Xantorians, tall and regal in their silver armor, stood in front of the humans like statues, their eyes hidden beneath dark visors. They spoke in a language no one understood, but the diplomat's body language conveyed everything. Their approach was peaceful, cautious. The sound of approaching footsteps snapped Langford from his thoughts. Dr. Erin Kerr walked into the room, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and suspicion. "What do we know about them?" she asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Langford didn't answer immediately. He stared at the Xantorian figures on the holographic display, their fleet slowly descending from the clouds. "They claim to come in peace, but there's something off about all this," he said. "Their technology is beyond anything we've ever encountered, and they're offering no explanation." As the words left his mouth, a sharp, shrill alarm cut through the room like a knife. Erin's heart skipped a beat. The display flickered, showing a red dot rapidly approaching Earth's orbit. Another fleet. Erin's voice was almost a whisper, but it carried an unmistakable edge of fear. Langford's hand slammed down onto the console. "No," he growled. "It's the Vargrar. We knew they would come." The Vargrar, a merciless, war-hungry species known for their brutal tactics and unforgiving nature, had been the source of countless reports of violence in the galaxy. Their fleet had been slowly advancing toward Earth for months, drawn by the same reports of Earth's unusual technology that had attracted the Xantorians. Erin's mind raced. "They're not here to negotiate, are they?" Langford shook his head. "They're here to take what they want, by force, if necessary." Outside, the Xantorian fleet had finally touched down. The ground rumbled as their ships deployed, massive metallic figures emerging from the shadows. The air shimmered with the heat of their engines, and Earth's military personnel stood frozen, unsure whether to salute or to prepare for an attack. In a tense moment of silence, the lead Xantorian diplomat stepped forward. His armor gleamed under the morning sun, and for a moment, his imposing presence seemed to cast a spell over the crowd. He raised one hand, a silent gesture that commanded attention. The human soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons, their fingers itching to react, but Langford held them back with a sharp gesture. Erin stepped forward, her eyes locked on the alien diplomat. Her pulse raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I'm Dr. Erin Kerr," she said, her voice steady but firm. "We've been monitoring your fleet, and we know why you're here." The Xantorian's dark visor slid up, revealing a pair of alien eyes, cold and calculating. "You are correct," the diplomat replied, his voice smooth, though tinged with an unfamiliar sharpness. "We seek to understand your species, your technology. But there is another reason. A greater threat approaches." Before Erin could ask another question, the ground shook again. This time, it wasn't just the rumble of alien engines. It was the unmistakable tremor of another attack. A massive, burning shape broke through the clouds. The Vargrar had arrived. The Xantorian diplomat's face remained impassive, but his eyes darted toward the sky. "You will need to make a choice," he said gravely. "We can help you fight, but only if you accept our aid and our terms." Erin's heart pounded. The weight of the decision pressed on her shoulders like a mountain. Trust the aliens, or face the Vargrar alone. With the enemy closing in fast, there was no time for second-guessing. Earth's survival might depend on this decision. As the first volley of plasma fire hit the Earth's atmosphere, Langford's voice echoed through the chaos. "Prepare for battle." And just like that, humanity was forced to face its first true test in the galaxy, a test that would change everything. The fight for survival had begun. The Earth trembled beneath Erin's feet as she stood in the heart of the military base, staring at the vast excavation site ahead. The sky was a dull gray, the clouds heavy with the promise of rain, but there was no storm in sight, only the remnants of an ancient battle. Earth's survival hung on the edge of a blade, and Aaron had just discovered a secret that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. Before her, the dark cavern stretched wide, its walls etched with symbols that none of the Earth's brightest minds had ever seen. There were no written records of this place, no clues to its origins. Yet, as she stood at the entrance, it was impossible to ignore the heavy presence of something extraordinary buried deep beneath the ground. The Xantorians had been adamant about their peace offering, but now, standing beside the first alien ship to land, Aaron knew that humanity's greatest hope lay in the shadows of the desert floor. A machine, ancient and forgotten, was hidden just below their feet, hidden from the prying eyes of the universe for reasons unknown. Aaron's boots crunched against the sand as she moved toward the center of the excavation. A massive structure lay buried beneath layers of earth, an enormous metallic frame, half revealed by the work of human soldiers and engineers. The eerie glow of alien lights flickered along the surface, reflecting the wreckage of the Xantorian ships scattered across the nearby base. "How much more do we need to dig?" Langford's voice rang out, cutting through the haze of dust in the air. "Not much longer," Dr. Kerr replied, her voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "But this is bigger than we expected." Her fingers brushed lightly over the surface of the wreckage, a strange warmth radiating from it, a hum that seemed to call out to her. It was unlike anything humanity had ever created. The technology was beyond the human mind, yet it felt so familiar, like a part of Earth's own forgotten history. Aaron knelt, inspecting the small glyph etched along the surface. It was precise, mathematical, and ancient, far older than any technology Earth had ever developed. As she traced the symbols, her mind raced. The strange power source the Xantorians had discovered was unlike any other. No matter how many times the scientists tried to reverse engineer it, they couldn't even begin to understand how it functioned. But there was more to this place than they had realized. The power, the incredible force that had drawn the Xantorians here, wasn't just in the ships they had found. It was embedded in the planet itself. The ground rumbled once more, and Aaron's heart skipped a beat as she realized what was happening. Above her, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the wreckage. The alien core, an unknown energy source that the Xantorians had feared, began to pulse, sending waves of raw power through the air. Langford and his team sprinted toward her, their faces illuminated by the bright, eerie glow now filling the cavern. "What the hell is going on?" Langford shouted, his voice strained. Aaron barely heard him. She was too focused on the pulse emanating from the alien core, which now seemed to come alive. It had begun to hum with a deafening intensity, vibrating the very earth beneath their feet. In a flash, a bolt of pure energy shot upward from the core, hitting the clouds above, and splitting the sky open with blinding light. "Stop it!" Aaron shouted, her voice breaking through the noise. "It's activating. We need to shut it down before." But it was too late. The energy continued to surge higher and higher until the core seemed to release one final powerful blast that sent a shockwave rippling through the desert, knocking everyone to the ground. For a moment, the world went silent. Then, as the dust settled, Aaron's heart froze in her chest. The sky above had shifted. An unnatural darkness had taken hold. In the distance, through the haze of dust and light, she saw what looked like an entire fleet of ships, each one a dark silhouette against the glowing horizon. The Vargrar had arrived. And now, humanity had something far greater to contend with than just a war for survival. The discovery of this hidden power had changed everything. The stakes were higher than ever. And this time, Earth would have to fight not just to survive, but to control the very force that could either save or destroy them all. The world seemed to hold its breath as the Vargrar fleet loomed above the horizon. Massive ships, dark and menacing, blocked out the stars with their sheer size. Their engines thrummed with a low, growling hum, vibrating the very air, while below, the earth trembled with the shockwaves of their arrival. The glowing core, the pulse of ancient energy buried beneath Earth's surface, had drawn them here. And now, standing at the edge of humanity's future, Erin Kerr felt a rising tide of fear and determination. She stood with General Langford, the weight of their decision pressing down on them like a stone. The Xantorians were positioned nearby, their hands resting lightly on the hilts of their strange weapons, watching the incoming threat with an unreadable expression. Despite their offer of peace, Erin couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There was no way these beings had come to Earth just to trade knowledge. They had their own agenda, and the Vargar's sudden appearance proved it. "Do you think they'll strike first?" Langford asked, his voice hoarse as he studied the advancing Vargar fleet. Erin shook her head, unwilling to acknowledge the worst-case scenario. The human forces, now scattered across the desert, were scrambling to prepare for battle. But no matter how much they fortified the base, it would never be enough to stand against the Vargar alone. And even with the Xantorians at their side, the unknown power of the alien core could turn the tide. But only if they could figure out how to control it. "We don't have a choice," Erin said, looking toward the glowing alien core. "If the Vargar gain control of that technology, everything is lost." Langford's jaw clenched. "Then we fight." As the Vargar ships began their descent, the sky crackled with unnatural energy. The air seemed to burn with the weight of what was to come. Soldiers scrambled to their stations, but their faces were grim, knowing that the coming battle would be nothing like anything they had ever faced before. On the battlefield below, human forces took up their positions, weapon systems powered up and ready for the worst. But Erin couldn't stop herself from looking back at the Xantorians, who remained eerily still, as if awaiting a signal. Their ships shimmered above, but it was the way their leaders held themselves that unsettled her most, their calm, focused demeanor in the face of an impending storm. Then the first blast tore through the sky. It was as though the heavens themselves had been split open. The Vargar fleet unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, the sky lighting up in flashes of blinding white. The ground shook violently as the alien weapons hit, sending waves of heat and energy across the battlefield. Soldiers were thrown back, their bodies colliding with the earth as the explosion rang out. Erin's heart raced. "Get them to cover," she shouted, pulling Langford down behind a makeshift barricade. "That was just a warning shot," Langford growled, his eyes fixed on the sky. "The real battle's coming." The Vargar ships shifted, massive gun turrets swiveling with lethal precision. But it was the Xantorians who made their move first. In one smooth motion, the Xantorian diplomat stepped forward, raising one arm high in the air, signaling to his fleet. With a low, resonating hum, the Xantorian ships powered up, releasing bolts of energy that collided with the Vargar's incoming fire. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Erin ducked as another explosion sent debris flying overhead. Her mind raced, trying to focus. The Xantorians were skilled in battle, but it was clear they hadn't been prepared for this. The Vargar's weapons were powerful, overwhelming in their force. She could see the ripples in the air, the energy in the blasts making the very fabric of reality shudder with each hit. Yet, amid the chaos, Erin caught a glimpse of something unusual. The Xantorians weren't just fighting. They were guiding the battle. Their ships darted through the air with impossible speed, their movements so fluid that it was as if they were dancing between the incoming blasts. There was something familiar in their tactics, as if they had dealt with this kind of fight before. They weren't just protecting Earth. They were taking control. The pulse of energy from the ancient core grew stronger, building like a storm on the horizon. Erin felt it in her bones, the pull of the power that lay dormant beneath the surface. It was almost as if the very core of the planet was awake, responding to the destruction above. "Langford," she shouted over the noise of the battle. "We need to get to the core. If we can unlock its power, we can win this fight." Langford turned, his expression one of grim determination. "Lead the way." With no time to waste, Erin bolted forward, weaving through the chaos as explosions continued to rock the landscape. She couldn't stop now. Not when humanity's future was at stake. The battlefield had become a tempest of fire and chaos. Earth's sky was torn apart by the blazing firestorms of alien weaponry, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning metal and ozone. The Vargar were relentless, each ship a monstrous titan, unleashing waves of destructive energy as if Earth were nothing more than a target. But the Xantorians, in their sleek, silver ships, moved with uncanny precision, their weapons sparking in elegant arcs of blue and white, cutting through the Vargar's bombardments with astonishing grace. Amidst the deafening noise of battle, Erin Kerr sprinted through the scattered debris, her mind focused on one thing: the ancient alien core that lay deep within the desert. Every instinct screamed at her to keep moving, to reach it before the Vargar could. The distant rumble of explosions made the ground tremble, but she pushed on, driven by the urgency that burned through her veins. Behind her, General Langford was right on her heels, leading a small group of soldiers who were tasked with protecting her at all costs. They kept their heads low, moving swiftly through the shifting battlefield as plasma fire erupted around them. Erin didn't look back. She didn't need to. She knew they were with her, and that thought alone gave her the strength to push forward. The closer they got to the excavation site, the more intense the battle became. The Vargar ships were closing in, their massive forms blacking out the sun. Every few moments, a pulse of energy would rip through the air, sending shockwaves that sent soldiers tumbling to the ground. Erin. Langford's voice pierced the chaos. We need to move faster. The Xantorians won't hold them off much longer. She nodded without speaking, her heart pounding in her chest. They were so close now. The distant glow of the core was visible, pulsing from beneath the cracked earth like a heartbeat, the source of the storm above. As they neared the site, Erin could see the Xantorian ships overhead, engaging the Vargar forces in a violent dance. The alien ships zipped through the air with terrifying speed, their weapons cutting down the Vargar's offensive, but there were too many. The Vargar were relentless. At last, they reached the site. The excavation pit was now a war zone, a chaotic mess of sand and stone, but at the center of it all, the alien core remained untouched. The huge structure loomed above them, an enormous, shining mass of metal and glowing energy. Erin's breath caught in her throat as she approached it. She could feel its power, its pulse, a steady rhythm like a drumbeat that resonated deep within her bones. It called to her, a force too big to ignore. "Stand back," Erin ordered, her voice firm, as she reached for the console nearby. She had no idea how to operate it, but she had studied the symbols etched into the metal, and she had no choice but to try. Langford and the soldiers positioned themselves around her, keeping a watchful eye on the surrounding battlefield. But Erin was focused entirely on the core now. She ran her fingers over the intricate symbols, the touch sending jolts of energy through her hand, like a living thing responding to her presence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the core hummed, its glow intensifying. The ground beneath them vibrated as the energy surged upward, a visible wave rippling outwards. It was as though the planet itself had awakened. Erin's heart raced. She had no idea what was about to happen. Would it activate fully, or would it destroy everything in its wake? Then, as if the very sky itself had been split open, the pulse of energy shot upward once more, but this time it was different. The light was brighter, sharper, and it surged out across the battlefield, engulfing the Vargar ships. Erin stumbled back as the shockwave hit, but it wasn't the destruction she feared. The energy had a different quality. It wasn't just a weapon. It was alive. It spread outward, cascading across the battlefield, wrapping around the Vargar ships, and draining them of their power. For a moment, there was silence. The Vargar fleet, now frozen midair, began to crumble. Their weapons sputtered and died, and their ships dropped from the sky like leaves in autumn. The Xantorian ships, meanwhile, pulsed with energy, their weapons charging again, stronger than before. Erin's eyes widened. They hadn't expected this. The core had turned the tide, but not in the way they had anticipated. The Xantorians now controlled the battlefield, their ships gliding effortlessly through the air, taking down the remaining Vargor forces with swift, precise shots. But even as the battle seemed to wind down, Erin couldn't shake the nagging feeling in her chest. The core had activated, yes, but at what cost? She turned to Langford, her voice low. "We've won. For now. But what comes next?" Langford didn't answer right away. He simply stared at the flickering core, the light reflecting in his eyes. The silence that followed the eruption of energy felt wrong, unnatural. Earth's battlefield was no longer a cacophony of blaster fire and explosions. Instead, there was a stillness, an eerie calm that settled like a blanket over the scorched earth. The Vargor fleet had fallen, their ships now wreckage scattered across the sky, crumbling like ancient monuments to a forgotten war. Erin Karras stood frozen, her breath shallow, her eyes locked on the alien core that had altered the course of the battle. It still pulsed with an unsettling energy, its glow flickering as if it were breathing, alive in a way no technology should be. The very air around it hummed, vibrating with the power it had unleashed, and the ground beneath her feet still trembled with the aftershocks of the energy wave. The Xantorian ships hovered above, their sleek forms now in perfect alignment, their weapons powered down. The soldiers on the ground stood motionless, unsure of what had just transpired. But it was Langford's voice that broke the silence. "Erin, what the hell did we just unleash?" She turned to him, her expression unreadable. The general's face was covered in dust and sweat, his eyes wide with disbelief. Erin didn't answer immediately. She couldn't. The energy she had felt from the core still pulsed in her veins, and she could hear the whispers of power calling out from beneath the earth. "I don't know," she said at last, her voice barely a whisper. "But it was the only option we had." Langford shook his head, looking around at the wreckage. The Vargor ships were no longer a threat, but the victory felt hollow. There was no celebration, no relief in the air, just uncertainty. Did the Xantorians plan for this? Langford asked, his voice low. Erin glanced over at the alien diplomat, who stood among his people, watching them with an expression that was both distant and calculating. There was something in his gaze that made her skin crawl, as though the aliens weren't as innocent as they appeared. The diplomat stepped forward, his voice smooth but carrying a weight of authority. "The power you just unleashed is unexpected, but it is not outside the scope of our understanding." Erin's stomach twisted. She didn't like the sound of that. The Xantorians had been too quiet since the battle ended, and now they seemed too calm, too controlled. They had offered their help, but this was far beyond anything they had hinted at. "What do you mean by that?" Erin asked, her voice firmer now, though her pulse quickened with a sense of dread. The diplomat raised a hand, his dark eyes flickering as he studied the glowing core in the distance. "What you have activated is not a mere weapon. It is a conduit, a key to greater knowledge, power, and control. Your species has just taken its first step into something far larger than yourselves." Langford stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "And what does that mean for us? For Earth?" The diplomat's lips curled into a faint smile, but there was no warmth in it. "It means your world is now of great interest to more than just the Vargor. There are others who will come, others who seek the power your planet holds. The core you've activated is a beacon, and now the galaxy knows you exist in a way they never have before." Erin felt her blood run cold. A beacon. She had thought they were just trying to survive the war. Now she realized with a sickening certainty that the fight was far from over. The Vargor had been only one of the many dangers looming on the horizon. "You knew this would happen," Erin said, her voice sharp with accusation. The diplomat's expression didn't change. "We did not know how it would unfold, but we have been preparing for this moment. Humanity's potential is remarkable, and you will need our guidance." Langford stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "And what happens if we don't accept your guidance?" The Xantorian's gaze grew colder. "Then you will face the consequences of your actions alone." Erin's heart pounded in her chest. The weight of their words pressed down on her like a suffocating fog. The galaxy was watching. And the Xantorians, it seemed, were not as benevolent as they had first appeared. As she looked back at the alien core, still humming with energy, a realization struck her. This was just the beginning. Whatever lay ahead, Earth had just opened a door to a galaxy full of unknown threats and unimaginable power. And they had no idea how to control it. The battle for Earth's future wasn't over. It was only just beginning. And this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about shaping humanity's place in the galaxy. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The Vargrar fleet had been defeated, but the victory felt far from complete. Erin Kerr stood at the edge of the war-torn battlefield, her boots sinking slightly into the scorched earth as the last remnants of smoke and dust settled. The Xantorians hovered above, their sleek ships glinting ominously under the waning light. But it wasn't the defeated Vargrar she was worried about anymore. It was what the Xantorians had said. The core still pulsed, glowing brightly, its energy shifting as though it were alive, waiting for something. Erin didn't like how it felt, this strange sense of power that no one seemed to fully understand. She glanced over her shoulder, meeting Langford's eyes, and saw the same worry reflected in his gaze. The human soldiers were scattered across the field, securing the perimeter, but the real battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. A group of Xantorian leaders moved toward her. The diplomat, with his inscrutable face, was at the front, flanked by two others, their robes shimmering in the fading light like liquid silver. They exuded an air of quiet confidence, as if they had already won whatever game they were playing. "You've done well, human," the diplomat said, his voice smooth and even. There was something almost patronizing in the way he spoke, though Erin couldn't quite place it. "Your world is resilient, and your species, adaptable." Erin kept her gaze steady, despite the discomfort gnawing at her. "I'm glad we could help, but your actions today have raised more questions than answers. What exactly is going on here? What did we just unleash?" The diplomat tilted his head slightly, considering her. "You activated a weapon, a tool for accessing greater knowledge. It is not for destruction alone, though it can be used as such." His voice carried an odd mix of awe and warning. "The core is connected to a larger network, scattered across the galaxy. It is not meant for your species to wield lightly." Langford stepped forward, his hand resting on his weapon as he studied the alien leader. "We don't need any guidance, thank you. We're capable of handling things ourselves." The diplomat's eyes flicked to Langford briefly, then back to Erin, his expression unreadable. "That is for you to decide. But know this, there are factions in the galaxy far older and more powerful than you can comprehend. The Vargrar were simply the beginning. What you've just done has alerted them to your presence. They are not the only threat." A chill ran down Erin's spine. "Who are these other factions?" she demanded. The diplomat's lips curled ever so slightly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I cannot reveal their names, not yet, but they will come. And when they do, your planet will be caught in a war that spans across the stars. You are now a player in a game you didn't even know existed." Erin's mind raced. The situation was spiraling out of control, faster than she could process. Earth wasn't just fighting for survival against one alien race. It was now part of a much larger, more dangerous conflict. And the Xantorians, though seemingly allies, were more like chess masters preparing humanity for a game they hadn't chosen to play. "Why are you helping us?" Erin asked, her voice low. "What do you stand to gain from all of this?" The diplomat's gaze shifted again. This time, there was a flicker of something, maybe regret. "We do not wish for Earth to fall under the influence of the Vargrar or the others. It is not your time to be enslaved by their power." His tone was still cold, but there was a faint edge of something almost like compassion. "But you will need allies in this coming war. Whether you like it or not, we are your best chance of surviving what's to come." Erin clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. "And if we refuse?" she asked. The diplomat's eyes softened for a moment. "Then you will face it alone. But make no mistake, the war is coming. It will find you, regardless of your readiness." The ground beneath Erin's feet seemed to vibrate again, as if the earth itself had heard the diplomat's words. A shiver ran up her spine, and she glanced at Langford, who was watching her closely, waiting for a sign. She turned back to the diplomat. "We'll take your help, for now. But know this, if we find out you've been using us, if we find out you've been playing a game with our lives." The diplomat's gaze was unwavering. "You will have the chance to prove yourselves. Humanity's future, it is in your hands." And as the last light of day disappeared beneath the horizon, Erin knew one thing for certain. The coming battle would be the hardest fight Earth had ever faced. Whether they were ready or not, humanity had just become part of a galaxy-wide war, and it was only just beginning. The night had fallen over Earth, but the war was far from over. The once calm skies were now a permanent canvas of swirling clouds and flickering light, the remnants of battle still haunting the horizon. The world had changed, and Erin Kerr could feel it deep in her bones. The Xantorians, though allies in some sense, had left an unsettling shadow over their victory. They were not here to help Earth for its own sake. They were here because of what Earth could offer. And that knowledge left a sour taste in her mouth. Erin stood in the makeshift command center, staring at the holographic maps spread out before her. The planet's military had quickly mobilized, bolstered by the Xantorian technology. But despite all the advancements, despite the power now at their disposal, there was still an emptiness, a looming uncertainty. The Vargor had been beaten, but they were not the true threat. That threat was something far more terrifying. Langford entered, his face grim, his steps purposeful. He didn't need to say anything. The air between them crackled with the weight of their unspoken thoughts. Earth had won a battle, but the war had just begun, and the galaxy they were now part of was far darker than anything they had imagined. "You've seen the new reports?" Langford asked, his voice tight. Erin nodded, her fingers brushing over the holographic map, her eyes scanning the star charts. "The Vargrar were just a distraction. We've received intel. There are other factions out there, factions that know about the core now. We've only seen the tip of the iceberg." "Yeah," Langford muttered, his voice betraying his frustration. "The Xantorians are right about one thing. The galaxy is full of things that want us dead. The only question now is, who's coming first?" Before Erin could respond, the ground beneath their feet shook. A deep rumble echoed through the command center, followed by the distant sound of sirens. The lights flickered, and for a moment, it felt as if the whole world held its breath. "What the hell was that?" Langford demanded, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. Erin's heart skipped a beat as the rumbling intensified. Her mind raced. Something was coming. Something bigger than they were prepared for. The Xantorians had warned them. Others would come, but Erin hadn't expected it to happen so soon. A voice crackled through the comms, the voice of one of the soldiers stationed at the perimeter. "Commander Kerr, we've got something. Massive. Approaching fast. We can't get a lock on it." "Damn it," Erin muttered under her breath. She turned to Langford. "We need to move now." She grabbed her jacket and sprinted out of the command center, Langford right behind her. Outside, the night was alive with flashes of red and orange, as explosions rocked the distant skyline. The Xantorian ships hovered overhead, their elegant forms cutting through the darkness. But even they seemed unsure, their weapons powered up, but not firing. "What are they waiting for?" Erin asked, her breath coming fast. Langford didn't answer. He was staring into the sky, his face pale. Then she saw it, a shadow in the clouds. It was massive, a blackened silhouette that seemed to blot out the stars, moving with impossible speed. The air seemed to ripple as it descended, an immense craft that dwarfed even the Xantorian ships. Erin's heart dropped into her stomach. She knew what this was. The alien vessel was like nothing she had ever seen. It was smooth and organic, as though it had grown from the very fabric of space itself. The surface shimmered with an otherworldly glow, and its shape seemed to shift as if it were alive, its presence alone casting a sense of dread over the land below. "Is that?" Langford's voice trailed off, too stunned to finish the thought. "The other faction," Erin whispered, her voice tight with realization. "They're here." The ground shook again, this time more violently, as the craft descended toward the Earth's surface. It wasn't just a ship, it was a harbinger, a symbol of a power greater than anything humanity could comprehend. The air was thick with anticipation, the Earth trembling beneath their feet, as though the planet itself feared what was coming. Erin took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing thoughts. This was it. The moment they had feared was here. The galaxy had just revealed its true face, and Earth was standing at the crossroads of a war that would decide its fate. The Xantorians, still hovering above, appeared to be waiting for something, maybe for Earth to make its move. But Erin knew better. The game had shifted again. And this time, Earth wasn't just fighting for survival. It was fighting for its place in a galaxy that was more dangerous than it had ever imagined. The battle for the future had only just begun.